Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to understanding complex ideas straight from the sources you share with us.
Hey there.
Today, we're diving headfirst into, well, a really interesting intersection in advanced AI.
Yeah, we're going to try and unpack the potential links between reasoning models and something called meta-artificial communication.
Now, that might sound a bit technical up front.
It does, but stick with us because it's actually a really intriguing area. Could change how we think about intelligent systems.
Exactly. So think of reasoning models as these like super smart AIs. They tackle complex problems, breaking them down step by step, almost like showing their work.
Right, and meta-artificial communication, or MAC, that's basically AI agents talking about how they talk to each other.
Okay, so our mission today is to explore how these two kind of distinct fields,
Which aren't directly connected in the materials we looked at.
right, how they could potentially come together and, what that might mean.
We've got a couple of sources that sort of hint at these connections, and another that really digs into what reasoning models do and their challenges, especially with efficiency.
Okay, let's get into it then.
All right, so maybe let's start with a closer look at these reasoning models first.
Good idea.
As one of our sources explains, these are basically advanced large language models, LLMs, but they're specifically designed for those really complex multi-step problems.
And what makes them special, you were saying, is their structured thinking.
Exactly. You can actually see evidence of it in the language they output.
Oh yeah, the source mentioned these reasoning-related tokens,
Mm-hmm.
like alternatively, or wait, check, things like that.
Yeah, they're like little signposts showing the thought process.
So clues to the reasoning, not the reasoning itself. Gives you a sense of the AI sort of exploring options, right?
Precisely. But here's where it gets tricky. Even with this detailed approach.
They can get bogged down.
Yeah, exactly. The sources point out a key challenge. If the input, the instructions, are a bit ambiguous, they can end up producing redundant and verbose outputs.
Okay, so they over-explain or just repeat themselves without really getting anywhere new.
You got it. There's even a term for it, the overthinking phenomenon.
Ah, I know that feeling.
Right. Where adding more steps, more thinking, doesn't actually lead to a better answer. It's like you're just spinning your wheels.
Like trying to explain something and ending up saying the same thing 3 different ways.
Yeah.
So what's being done about this? How do we help these, powerful thinkers avoid this digital overthinking?
Well, there's quite a bit of research happening. The sources outline a few main strategies to boost efficiency.
Okay.
So one angle is model-based optimization, designing the models to be more streamlined from the start. There are specific research projects mentioned, like towards widening the distillation bottleneck and soft caught.
All right. Building efficiency in.
Then there's output-based reduction, trying to trim down those unnecessary steps during the reasoning process.
Like editing on the fly.
Sort of.
Okay.
And reinforcement learning is another big one.
Where the AI learns from experience.
Yeah, it learns better, more efficient reasoning paths through trial and error, getting feedback. The source mentions work by Xiao and others in 2024 and Xiong et al. In 2025.
Okay.
And finally, there's agentic search integration, basically combining these models with better search tools, like the Search One example, so they find information more effectively instead of just, reasoning in circles.
So the goal is to make them more direct.
Yeah.
Less likely to get lost in the weeds showing all their work, including the dead ends.
That's a good way to put it. You want the logic, but maybe not every single detour.
Okay. Now let's switch gears a bit. Meta-artificial communication, MIC.
Right. So this is all about AI agents communicating about their communication.
Not just exchanging data, but talking about how they're exchanging data.
Exactly. Reflecting on and managing their interactions. You could think of it like a control layer for AI conversations.
Okay, like the AI version of a team debrief. Hey, how did that collaboration go? How can we communicate better next time?
Pretty much, yeah. That's a good analogy, especially as we get more AI systems needing to work together.
So what are the main goals here? What are the big potential wins?
Well, a huge one is transparency and understandability. If AIs talk about how they're talking, it gives us a window into their interactions, makes debugging complex systems potentially much easier.
I can see that, like an audit trail for conversations.
Exactly. And beyond debugging, it could really improve coordination between AIs. And maybe most excitingly, it opens the door to AI systems that can adapt and optimize their own behavior, their own communication protocols over time.
Wow, okay, so they could dynamically figure out the best way to talk to each other for a given task.
Potentially, yes. The source uses analogies like control planes, reflective systems, even protocol negotiation, like how computers agree on communication rules.
And how would this actually work, like technically?
The source mentions a few ways. You could have dedicated channels just for this meta talk,
Yeah.
or embed metadata within the regular messages, or maybe use reflective ATIs, different approaches.
Okay. But it's not all smooth sailing, I imagine. What are the hurdles?
Definitely challenges. Performance overhead is one. All this extra meta talk could slow things down.
Makes sense.
It also adds complexity to the system design, and there aren't really standards for M of yet.
Right. Everyone might be doing it differently.
Plus, you've got security considerations and just figuring out the right level of meta communication. How much detail is helpful versus just getting bogged down in talking about talking.
Yeah, you don't want the meeting to take longer than the actual work.
Exactly. So, powerful idea, but practical hurdles remain.
Okay, so we've got these two areas. Reasoning models doing step-by-step thinking, sometimes inefficiently.
And MAC, which is about AI reflecting on communication.
Now, the really interesting bit, how might they connect? Remember, the sources don't explicitly draw this line for us.
Right, this is where we get to speculate a bit based on the concepts. It's about exploring possibilities.
So let's think about that overthinking problem with reasoning models.
Yeah.
The opacity, the redundancy. Could MC principles help? What if a reasoning model had some kind of internal meta-communication about its own steps?
You mean it could sort of report on its own reasoning process internally?
Yeah. Could it say, okay, I'm exploring this path now, or maybe even, hold on, this seems redundant?
That's really interesting. That kind of self-awareness inspired by MC might help it produce more focused output. It could potentially flag its own loops.
So instead of just churning through steps, it could
What?
take a step back internally and evaluate, is this step actually productive?
Precisely. And that ties into fostering reflective capabilities, right?
Yeah.
MC is about reflection on communication strategies.
Huh.
Could we apply that internally within one reasoning model? Could it communicate with itself about its reasoning?
Identifying dead ends or those overthinking patterns?
Yes. This internal communication about reasoning, we could maybe call it meta-reasoning.
Meta reasoning. I like that. Like the model becomes its own internal critic or editor.
Kind of, yeah. And think about managing the complexity of those long reasoning chains. MSE is usually about multiple agents, but maybe the steps within a single model's reasoning process could be seen as internal interactions.
Oh, interesting. Like dependencies between steps.
Right. Could ME principles, this idea of meta-reasoning, help manage those internal steps? Assessing if each step is necessary, if it's making progress?
So an internal dialogue about its own thought process, that's a shift in perspective.
Yeah.
And what about making them more adaptive?
Well, a key benefit of MSE is enabling adaptation, right? AI is adjusting communication based on effectiveness.
Yeah.
So if a reasoning model had this meta-level awareness, if it could track how well its reasoning strategies are working.
Like this type of reasoning token doesn't seem to be helping.
Exactly. Or I'm not getting closer to the solution this way. It could then dynamically adjust its approach.
Which could directly tackle that overthinking issue. Make the whole process way more efficient.
It really could. It feels like a potential game changer for efficiency and maybe even capability.
But, and this is the important caveat we need to stress,
Absolutely.
the sources we looked at don't actually describe reasoning models using MAC like this today.
Correct. This is us connecting the dots, exploring potential future directions. It's speculative based on the concepts. We're asking, what if?
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. We have reasoning models, how AI solves complex problems step by step.
And meta-artificial communication, how AI interacts, coordinates, talks about talking.
And while there's separate research areas now, there seems to be this really fascinating potential synergy.
Yeah, the idea that an AI could not just reason, but also reflect on and maybe even communicate about its reasoning.
Internally or externally.
That feels like a really significant step. It could lead to AI that's more efficient, more transparent, more understandable.
Definitely. Which leaves us, and you, with a final thought to chew on.
Right. Could this ability for AI to do meta-reasoning, to think about its own thinking, communicate about it, could that be a key to unlocking truly adaptive, truly efficient intelligence?
And what other internal AI processes, beyond just reasoning, could benefit from that kind of self-reflection and internal communication? Something to ponder.
It feels like we're just scratching the surface here. If this sparked your interest, definitely look deeper into the research on both reasoning models and meta-artificial communication.
Lots to explore. Thanks for taking the deep dive with us.
Until next time.